What is up, YouTube? And welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! House. Guys, today I'm bringing you the channel's favorite deck profile, branded Despia. Yes, featuring the brand new card Duality from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge. This card adds so much explosiveness to the deck. Not only can it open up OTK potential, it helps dodge a lot of targeting effects like Imperm. Alright, let me not waste too much of your time. Let's jump in. Let's start off with our very small Despia engine. Just 3 copies of Albaz, 1 copy of Despia and Tragedy, and of course, 1 copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous, along with 1 Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted, and 1 Dogmatika Maximus. This might be a little bit different than most branded builds, but of course we are playing Duality, so Fleur-de-Lis and Maximus open up some easy lines to get into Dragoon. Not only that, they set up a lot for your deck through Guiding Quem being treated as a Dogmatika monster. So that means you open up a negate with Fleur-de-Lis and 2 extra deck dumps with Maximus. Fairly standard in today's meta, 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. It is pretty tough to face Kashtira with just 1. Albion the Shrouded Dragon for essentially a 4th copy of Fallen of Albaz. Not only that, the draw is just so good. Being able to essentially upstart Goblin built into the deck, what more can you ask for? Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, probably the best sort of support this deck has ever had. Just polymerization on legs. Springen's Kit, the auxiliary normal summon. You do want to prioritize the Albaz normal summon, but however, Springen's Kit does get you to Branded Fusion, so it is essentially just as good, but is a better extender than it is a starter. 1 Tri-Brigade Mercurier. I just think that hand traps that you can search for are absolutely broken. There's no reason not to run just at least 1. One copy of Bestial Saronir, 1 copy of the Bestial Lubellion. Unfortunately, this kind of lost its place in the meta. It's really only good against that dragon matchup or the matchup where you're facing a branded sort of variant. I think it's pretty good, but other than that, the engine is starting to lose kind of favor in the deck. The only reason I really still like the Bestial Lubellion is, of course, it gets you access to branded Lost. 1 copy of the Dark Magician, because, well, you really want to make Dragoon through Dark Magician, that way you get that pop. But of course, Duality makes it so easy to have access to it. Either way, Dragoon is just too powerful. And 1 Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. Specifically, the Duality build is adept at bringing this card out. You can cheat out Sanctifier Dragon from the extra deck with Duality, so it's why I decided to run it in this strategy. Now, getting into those crazy spells, 3 copies of Branded Fusion. As long as we have 3 copies, I recommend that you play 3 copies. 3 copies of Branded Opening. Same thing goes for this card. This card is limited in some sort of capacity in Master Duel and in the OCG. So while we have 3, we really have to take advantage of that. 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. Very good. Access to Blazing Cartesia, and going second, breaks boards with Fallen of Albaz. Speaking of breaking boards, 3 copies of Super Poly. I really think that in the Duality build, Super Poly just feels kind of mandatory. Duality helps a lot with going second, and Super Poly does just that. Speaking of Duality, probably one of the best cards this deck has ever gotten. It's essentially Mass Change with a draw effect in the graveyard. Just absolutely insane. Being able to now not hard lose to Imperm on your fusion extenders like Lubellion or Albion is just way too good. And of course, 3 copies of Nadir Servant to kind of circumvent the fact that this deck hard loses to Ash. some one-ofs. One, Branded in High Spirits. I think this card is absolutely nuts, especially in tandem with things like Nadir Servant or even the main deck Albion, to be able to dump it directly to the graveyard and have that hand economy keep coming back to you every end phase. You have a lot of things that discard: Branded Opening, Dragoon, Lubellians, the Fusion Monster. There are definitely a lot of things that discard in this deck. Super Poly. I mean, the list goes on and on. So you really need to keep that hand economy as high as you can in this deck. So Branded in High Spirits, in my opinion, is mandatory. One copy of Branded in Red, still mandatory. I think it's an awesome extender. It's great to set during the end phase. Brings out Guardian Chimera on your opponent's turn. Still really good. Branded Lost offers way too much protection to not run. Just the fact that I run the main deck Lubellian just shows how much I really want to see this card and how much I want to get its search effect off for things like Tri-Brigade Mercurier to play under Nibiru. There's so many things that this card provides. So good. Straight up the MVP out of all the branded spells. Gold Sarcophagus, I think if you're wanting to cut this deck back, because I am playing it at 43, then Gold Sarc is a card you can consider cutting. I just think that essentially being another copy of Branded Fusion is just way too good. Same thing with Foolish Burial, essentially another copy of Branded Fusion, being able to get the engine started in just one card. One copy of Called by the Grave, because again, this deck hard loses to Ash, and the only trap I decided to run in the deck is Branded Retribution. Yes, Branded Banishment is good, and you can play it if you want to, but I think, in my opinion, it's just requires a bit too much setup, and Duality would honestly kind of conflict with it, making it where you just have too many cards that rely on too much setup you don't want to brick. Now, like I said, a 43 card main deck, and now the extra deck, Titanic Clad, the Ash Dragon. Very good to dump directly from extra deck to grave, to be able to special summon things like Quem, or even search for Fleur de Lis for the negate. One copy of Lubellian. Very good now that you can tag this out with Duality, because you used to kind of hard lose to imperm on things like Lubellian or even Albion, and now that you have two targets for this with Duality, to be able to tag them out, it's just so good. It's like mass change for the deck. It's insane. Albion the Sanctified Dragon is one of those targets. You can of course hard make this card or cheat it out with Duality. Keep in mind you won't be able to revive it from the graveyard because it wasn't properly fusion summoned, it was actually special summoned from the deck. And two copies of Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. It really wouldn't be a branded deck without it. This card is absolutely one of the best boss monsters ever printed. Now for the kind of the Despia Dogmatika help that we get is Guignol the Dust Dragon, Despian Queritus, and Despian Luluwa Lilith. These cards all kind of help access the Despia and Dogmatika engines. Like Guignol being able to be tagged out with Duality for Dragoon. It's just absolutely insane. I wanted to keep Queritus and Luluwa Lilith in the deck because I feel like running those two really puts such a high ceiling on the kind of impact that Dust Dragon can have on your opponent's turn. So of course I ran all three. And now just for our generic kind of fusions, one copy of Garura, one copy of Predaplant Dragostapelia, and one copy of BORRELOAD Furious Dragon. These are all super poly targets. Not only is BORRELOAD Furious a super poly target, but it's also a Duality target. You can dump this directly from the extra deck to the grave to get a draw, Dragostapelia, the negate, and then BORRELOAD Furious to pop. It's just a lot of toolbox that this deck has access to now with cards like Duality. And then one Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Like I said, you can hard make it so you can get that pop effect, or you can cheat it out with Duality, even set Duality after you've done Dogmatika combos and then bring it out on your opponent's turn. A lot of versatility there. And last but definitely not least, Guardian Chimera. This card is absolutely absurd. I think one of the best fusion monsters ever printed. Definitely one of the best generic fusion monsters. But yeah, guys, that's it for the deck. That's 15 card extra deck, a 43 card main deck. I definitely recommend that you guys try this deck out. There's been a lot of talk about this deck being tier 1 for the NAWCQ, and I think that Duality will be a premier card for that event. And I mean, only time will tell. So definitely thank you for checking back in with the channel. And if you guys are going to the NAWCQ, good luck out there and peace.